Most of you know that I have two sons who are now in their 20s. And when they were little, they're friends now, but when they were little, they were not friends. They bickered quite a bit. Really, you know, when kids bicker, it drives you crazy. And I had to find a way to deal. My mission as a mother was to train my kids, teach my kids, so that they could be good citizens and good companions to me and to the other people they ended up working with in their lives and being married to, etc. So, good citizens, useful in the world, good companions. I thought, what happens out there when you fight? Well, if it's bad enough, you get fined or jailed for disturbing the peace. So I started fining them and jailing them. Jail was time out, of course. And fines were a bit of a problem because they didn't have any money. So at the beginning of the week, I would give them a bag of nickels, and I would say, whatever nickels you have left at the end of the week, you can keep. And so when the bickering got to a certain pitch, I would say, please stop bickering or you're going to owe me a nickel. And they would go, he started it. And I would say, no. I don't have time to have court every time about who started it. Plus, starting it can be very subtle. And I'm going to fine you both a nickel every time you keep fighting after I've asked you to stop. And if you say, Mom, he started it, that's a nickel too. And if they were fighting over a toy, I would put the toy in jail on top of the refrigerator for starting a fight. I'm like, this is a bad toy. It started a fight. It gets a time out. If they really weren't paying attention, I would use my exorcist voice, which I will not show to you today. The third time I said, pick up your toys, it was ugly, and they were like, Mom, please don't use that voice. Bless their hearts. I'm sure they're scarred for life. This morning I'm talking about the second of the 7 UU principles, which is we covenant to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human affairs. Now, covenant means promise, affirm means say yes to, and promote means actually further it in the world. So we're covenanting to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human affairs, in human relations, which sounds kind of easy unless you tack the words onto the end of it that I always ask you to tack onto it, beginning in our homes and congregations. And when you think about your home, you understand that justice and compassion are sometimes at odds with each other. You want to be fair and you want to be understanding, but you also need somebody to learn something. And if you're too understanding, you go, oh, poor thing, they didn't mean it. I don't mind being ignored. I don't mind the screaming. I don't mind the slapping. I don't mind, no. That is not becoming good companions. That is not becoming a good citizen. If nobody ever gives you justice, you end up believing that you are the center of the universe and that everything should adjust to you. And we do see some people like that out in the world. There are none in this congregation. So justice just means that you get what you deserve and that you do what's right. You know, if you open it, you close it. If you drop it, you pick it up. If you mess it up, you clean it up, etc. That's justice. And equity means everybody, the same rules apply to everybody. Some people don't get to skate because of their gender or the color of their skin or whatever. If you're going to get shot for a certain traffic violation, you should get shot for that if you're white too. See what I'm coming from? All right, that's equity. Justice really is that nobody gets shot for a traffic violation. I just want to be clear about that. But often there is compassion in the world, and the compassion leads to grace, and someone cleans up what you dirtied, and someone picks up what you dropped, and somebody closes what you opened. And they do it because they love you, or they do it because they understand why you didn't do it. And compassion balances with justice and gives some grace to justice. And it's pain and misery in the world usually comes from there not being a balance of justice, equity, and compassion. One of those factors is out of balance. And when you have this kind of steely-eyed punishment urge that says, well, this guy was a terrorist, so if he gets shot 5 times, he should just lie in the street and bleed and die instead of being taken to an air-conditioned hospital and given room service, etc. That is a steely-eyed punishment urge. And in the middle there is the justice urge, where you say, we are a nation of laws, and so we are going to treat everybody according to the law. That's ideal. That's what we aspire to, even if we don't always do it. And then you have compassion, which can be kind of mushy-gushy sometimes, and can get in the way of the right thing happening, and can get in the way of somebody learning. So here it is in the context of, let's take it back to raising children again. As I said in the beginning, I think a parent's job is to teach their children to be good, useful citizens and good companions too. There's a lot more to it, but that was my mission with the 2 children I had. And in our culture, we pay for things in money or labor or time. That's how we pay for things. That's our exchange in this culture. So if one of my kids made a mistake that cost me 40 minutes of my time, like he calls and goes, Ma, I forgot my lunch. I go, okay. I don't give him any trouble about it. I just say, okay, I'm going to leave right now my work, and I'm going to go home and get your lunch and take it to the school and then come back to work. That is going to take me about 40 minutes. So you're going to owe me 40 minutes this week. And, he wanted his lunch, so he'd be like, all right. So the 40 minutes they knew normally was in cleaning out the garage. But it was pretty equitable, I thought. They got their lunch, I got my garage worked on. I didn't have to resent the 40 minutes. I didn't have to fume. I didn't have to berate him, because I know where he got his forgetfulness from. I don't blame him, but even though I didn't blame him, I also didn't say, oh, it's okay, honey, my time is not worth anything, and yours, of course, is. No, that's not the way things work. I don't want them to learn that. My time is worth something. I'm happy to give it to you because I love you, but I want you to give some of yours back to me. That felt like justice, equity, and compassion at home. So I also had compassion on the boy who talked too much in class and made jokes to irritate the teacher, which was both boys. And the teachers would call me in all good faith, hoping that I was a good parent to work with. Sorry, teachers. And I would just say, their father does that. We've almost gotten kicked out of the movies for him adding dialogue to the movie, and I do that too, and they just can't do anything about it. Sorry. And I asked blessings on all of their teachers, including the Montessori teacher who was so sweet the whole year. And then at the end, I don't think the teachers are supposed to do this. She said, I'm so glad Sam is graduating. I used to think he was put on this earth to make my life a living hell. But now I like him very much. I was like, you used to just say he was lively. So that's what that means. Anyway. So you try justice, and you try equity, and you try compassion. But there is such a thing as justice without compassion. And there is such a thing as compassion without justice. And if you have too much compassion, if you're a compassion-oriented person and you go, oh, I understand why that criminal is a criminal, does that mean they shouldn't have to go to jail? If you understand why a child is behaving like a little monster, does that mean you shouldn't see what the child is struggling with and try to alleviate that struggling so that the child can be a better companion? It's not always punishment that's required. Sometimes justice involves understanding and addressing a problem. So how do you stop yourself from having what the Buddhist teachers called idiot compassion? That's a phrase that's attributed to Trungpa Rinpoche, and Pema Chodron amplified it, and she said that idiot compassion is this general tendency to give people what they want so that you don't have to deal with them anymore. It's a selfish kind of compassion because just giving what they want is the easiest way to go, even though it's not the best thing for them. Does that make sense? Have you ever had any situation like that in your life? Sometimes you have a sister or a cousin or a friend who calls you in the middle of the night to complain about the same thing every time, and you want to be compassionate, but after you're compassionate for 6 or 7 hours of this 1 hour at a time phone call in the middle of the night, pretty soon you start feeling like an idiot because your compassion isn't helping them. It's just helping them stay in that same place where they are. They just let off steam every now and then by burdening you, and nothing moves forward. So that's one example of idiot compassion, and there are a million of them. So to our urge for steely justice, we could quote to ourselves Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, who said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth makes the whole world blind and toothless. But to our rush of compassion, we might quote Malcolm X, who says, we must sometimes kill the one who is evil in order to save the many who are innocent. Now, I don't want to kill anybody. But I do think that sometimes a person who is hurtful needs to be removed from the group. We do this in our criminal justice system. Again, not very well, but our ideals, if we actually lived them, would be that if you behave terribly badly, then we remove you from the group for a little while, time out, in jail, and then you get to come back. But in a church community, a lot of times we have compassion to the point where we go, oh, I know that person just hurt 5 people's feelings over there by what she said, but she's doing her best, and we know her, and that's just how she is. That's just how she is. And she's a little bit brusque. And so we have mercy on the person who's behaving badly, but is that merciful to the people who've gotten hurt? I've heard about a church far away and long ago where a person stood up. They had open mic joys and sorrows, like some people do. And the person stood up and just was a Holocaust denier and started talking about how the Holocaust never happened. And the people in the congregation were truly troubled by this, but didn't know what to do because to stand up and stop the person would seem not compassionate. What do you do in a situation like that? To me, that was idiot compassion, because you have 400 people suffering while one person gets to spout whatever toxic stew they're spouting. What do you do? A lot of times compassion and justice fight with each other, and you have to be a sturdy, wise person in order to know how to walk that path. Does that make sense? Good. I think a belief in the worth and dignity of every person, which is our first principle that I already talked about, I think if you believe in somebody's worth and dignity, you believe in them enough to confront them about incorrect behavior. And if you say, oh, they can't help it, oh, they can't do anything about it, that's not respecting them. Now, some people use the word love as a way of encompassing both justice and compassion. If you treat somebody with love, that means you love them enough to help them overcome incorrect behavior, but only with fear and trembling, and only after you've cleaned up your own incorrect behavior, which would make most of us fall silent. Rabbi Jesus said, don't try to take the little speck out of somebody else's eye when you've got a great big log in your own eye. So first, we try to take the log out of our own eye before we get that little speck out of somebody else's eye, even though it's way more fun to deal with somebody else's than it is to deal with our own. You know that. So this is all a very complicated walk, this walk of the second principle. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. We've tried to flesh it out for us in our Healthy Relations Covenant, which is written on a big board in the fellowship hall. So you can see if people do become members of this congregation, they sign a book, and by the signing of the book, they agree to support the church financially and with their time. They agree not to count on somebody else to get things done and to fund the mission to fill up the gas tank, as Eric said. They agree to affirm and promote the principles, and they agree to the Healthy Relations Covenant. That's our way of trying to walk this path. And if justice, equity, and compassion sounds too vague to you, then just add some words on the end of it. Say justice, equity, and compassion at the grocery store, justice, equity, and compassion at the gym, justice, equity, and compassion in our living room, justice, equity, and compassion in my car right now, and that guy just cut me off. What do I do? You say, bless his heart, he probably just got out of the hospital.